At home. Welcome to another installment of News24 Frontline. My name is Adriaan Basson. I'm the editor-in-chief of News24, and we are coming to you live from Media Park in Auckland Park, Johannesburg tonight to speak to the very important topic of education, access, and language. Thank you very much to our studio guests in Johannesburg who braved the weather to be with us tonight, and very special thanks to Dimas Dahl for keeping us warm tonight, before and afterwards. Ladies and gentlemen, I can assure you that we will not be going through the trash tonight to look at our wine bottles, so you're welcome to drink as much as you like after our conversation. What triggered tonight's discussion was the spectacular return of Mr. Panyaza Lesufi as the MEC for Education and Youth Development in Gauteng, after public pressure was put on Premier David Makhura, who had originally moved Mr. Lesufi to the provincial treasury after the 2019 elections. AfriForum called Mr. Lesufi's return a shock, while his fans on social media and in the real world welcomed him back to continue with unfinished business. Tonight, I'm joined by the man of the moment, Panyaza Lesufi, in conversation with three top educationists to help us navigate the sensitive ground of education, access, and language. Ladies and gentlemen and viewers, if there's one thing that I've learned over the many years as a journalist and the editor, it is that all South Africans, irrespective of our race, creed, or class, are passionate about a better education and a better future for our children. I hope that this discussion and the many discussions we will continue to have hereafter on News24, at our workplaces, at our homes, and at our schools will be focused on this single-minded outcome, without which our future really looks bleak. Allow me to introduce my panelists for tonight. Panyaza Lesufi, Gauteng Education MEC, Deputy Chairperson of the African National Congress in Gauteng, and an ardent fan of Morocco Swallows. MEC Lesufi grew up on Johannesburg's East Rand and studied at the University of Natal, Durban, towards a bachelor's in business administration, where he got involved in student politics. So MEC, you were very duly qualified to take over finance with your studies there.
She was my lecturer.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was my business administration lecturer.
We'll hear how you address it later on. Lesufi is a former advisor to Basic Education Minister Angie Motshekga and a spokesperson for the NPA and the Scorpions, where we actually met for the first time. Professor Mary Metcalfe. Professor Mary Metcalfe has worked in education since 1974 as a teacher, principal, and lecturer. She served as the MEC for Education in Gauteng and for Agriculture, Conservation, Environment, and Land Affairs from 1994 to 2004. So there was just one person between the two of you. She was the head of the Education Department at Wits University from 2004 to 2009, before joining the Department of Higher Education and Training as Director General in 2009. Currently, she's the Director of Education Change at PILO, an NPO that works with government in improving learning in schools at scale. They are currently working in 4,000 schools in KwaZulu-Natal, Gauteng, and the Free State. Professor Metcalfe is also an honorary research associate at the University of Johannesburg. Very welcome, Mary. Right next to me, I have Dr. Makhosi Khoza, and it's a pleasure to introduce you tonight as a linguist. Dr. Makhosi Khoza, who some of you may remember as a politician in a previous life, has a PhD in administration, a master's degree in social science, and is a fellow at the Aspen Global Leadership Institute. Her achievements include groundbreaking research culminating in a textbook that unpacks the logic and sophistication of indigenous languages. Using South Africa's lingua franca Zulu as an example, Dr. Khoza has proven the consistency of Zulu with mathematical formulas and science principles. She has since created a language order called Uzalo, or the Ubuntu Zulu Alphabetical Logical Order, comprising of a 12-noun cluster system. You must explain to us what that is, please.
Yeah.
Which drives the construction of meaningful sentences. Like I said in a previous life, we knew her as a politician and executive director of OUTA. Welcome, Dr.
Wow, thank you.
And to the far right, physically, not politically, is Mr. Paul Colditz. Mr. Paul Colditz, the CEO of the Federation of Governing Bodies of South African Schools. Colditz is a qualified attorney who graduated from the University of the Free State with an LLB in 1978. He practiced as director of Schoeman Marie Attorneys in Bloemfontein until 2008, when he took up a permanent position at FETSAS. He's the author of numerous publications of school governing bodies and is a prolific international speaker on the topic. So again, welcome to all the viewers, to our studio guests, and to my eminent panelists tonight. You can hear they are very qualified to be discussing this topic with me. Again, if you want to hashtag, please join the conversation using the hashtag News24 Frontline. Use Twitter, send us your questions. At the end, we will have a round of question and answer. Use the hashtag News24 Frontline for those questions, which we will put to our panelists right at the end. So let's get going. To start the conversation, because I think tonight we will disagree, and we have to disagree. This is a safe space, and we will respect each other in our opinions. But I thought, why don't we start with the things we agree on? So I tried to list 10 of them, and I hope I'm correct. And if I'm not, please raise your hand, or at a later stage in our panel, tell me that you don't agree. Okay, let's go. 10 things I think all of us agree on. Firstly, for 46 years, between 1948 and 1994, South Africa was governed by a racist minority government that spent disproportionately more, some say up to 10 times more money, on the education of white children like myself than on the schooling of black children. 2, the legacy of apartheid's Bantu education system and racist spatial planning meant that schools in previously whites-only neighborhoods developed at a much faster rate than township schools and were better resourced in 1994 because of their location. Nobody disagreeing at this point. Very happy.
Well, we'll come in at some stage.
Yeah.
No, say.
Yeah.
Well, not because of their location, but because not their location geographically, but their location in terms of class, race, hierarchies.
So back to the first point.
Exactly.
Correct. Okay, so maybe those two are one. So maybe
Yeah.
we've got 9.
And also, again, 46 years is understating
Exactly.
the fact, because it did not only start in 1948. The whole colonial period is about linguicide,
That's right.
basically.
Agreed. We agree.
Yeah. So I'm just adding.
You see how difficult it is to get people to Okay.
No, I was wanting to
Yes,
say
Paul.
that prior to 1948, the only schools that black children could go to, African children, were schools set up by missions, churches. So there wasn't any formal program of education, schooling for black African children.
Agreed?
No, continue. I think
Continue.
Guys, we need to agree on something. Okay. Number 3, this one is easy. The South African Constitution under Section 29(1)(a) enshrines the right to a basic education for every South African.
Yes.
Thank you. Number 4, under Section 29(2), every child has the right to receive education in the official language or languages of their choice in public educational institutions where that education is reasonably practical, and it then qualifies what that means. Correct? Number 5, the South African Schools Act of 1996, Section 18A, provides that the governing body of a school must determine the language policy of a school, subject to the Constitution and the Schools Act. Number 6.
That's actually not 18A.
it's 5.
It's 5.
It's 5.
Section 5.
Thank
Five.
you. Section 5,
Yes,
apologies.
it's 5.
You see, you've got a lawyer on the panel.
He also knows.
I was being smart by mentioning the sections.
I'm
Okay.
insulted with it every day, so I know it.
Number 6. This one, I thought you're going to agree on this, but let's see. It's universally acknowledged that there are significant benefits to mother tongue language being taught for the first 6 years of a child's school life.
I agree with that, but I think that sometimes we can make it absolutely clear and simple by saying a child has to learn in a language they understand.
Choice,
Their
yes.
mother tongue, yeah.
Yeah, but
Particularly
choice.
their mother tongue.
yeah, but let's be clear that they have to understand the language, and the problem is many children are learning in a language they don't understand, and that's
Exactly.
Okay. I think we kind of agree, right? Okay. 7. Nearly 80% of children in grade 4 in South Africa cannot read for meaning or understand sentences in any language.
Yeah, that's the Pearl's
The
research.
exact percentage is 78%.
78. Thank you, Mr. Lawyer. Number 8, there are 23,719. This stat is from last year, MEC, so it may be a bit more now. There are 23,719, let's say almost 24,000, as we love to do in the news, public schools in South Africa,
Yeah.
of which single medium Afrikaans schools make up 1,279, or 5% of the total number. Correct? Thank you. Number 9, single medium African language schools make up less than 4% of the total number of public schools, and English has become the majority language in the most of these schools.
Yes.
Qualified, yes?
No, no.
Okay.
We agree with you, but we agree with the fact.
Yes.
But the argument will be coming
Yeah,
later.
absolutely, absolutely. I just want to get something we agree on.
Yeah.
We have to get something. We're almost there. Okay, number 10 or number 9. In the past 10 years, the number of learners in Gauteng MEC increased by almost 350,000, while the number of schools increased by 85. How much did you say?
500,000.
500,000. And the
The
schools by
correct
85.
number, we have a difference of opinion, difference of fact here. It's 393,000, and the number of schools is 88.
We'll debate that.
Okay,
Average, you are correct.
average.
Yeah, between the two of them.
I thought it was going to get hot later. Okay. So, MEC Lesufi, taking into account what we've just agreed on, in terms of historical context and current realities and challenges, why do you think there is still so much distrust and acrimony between you and the Afrikaans schools community in Gauteng?
I doubt there is. I think it's a misunderstanding, to be quite frank. And maybe let me start with your 10 questions, the areas that you say we agree on. I get a little bit disappointed if the debate about education in our country is about language. I think we are missing a point. It must be about what is happening inside the classroom, the quality of educators, the quality of infrastructure, the quality of our books, and also the quality of the outcome. And language becomes part of that product. It's not a standalone alone. It becomes part of that product, and then we try to ensure that everyone, as they wish, they will choose the language that they want to be taught. But what is very, very important is that you inherited an education system that I normally say is like an Irish coffee. Black at the bottom, white on top. The black component, it's large and bitter. The white component, it's sweet. Until you change the South African education system not to be an Irish coffee, to be a South African coffee that does not have color, that does not have race, and that does not discriminate, you're not going to win this particular battle. And time has arrived that in the last 25 years, which the ruling party that I come from, we worked on the policy of persuasion, persuasion, persuasion. Persuading those that we disagree to see the importance of an unracial education system, to persuade those that we disagree to see the importance of access, to persuade those that we disagree to see the need that all our children should be treated equally. We are saying this because all our teachers are taught from the same pot. There's no single university that is teaching teachers for private school, or teaching teachers for township school, or teaching or training teachers for former Model C schools. All of them are trained at the center, but the outcome is different. If they go to a certain sector of society, the outcome is different. So the need for us to ensure that we build a truly non-racial South Africa starts in the classroom. If we don't have a non-racial classroom, we're not going to have a non-racial South Africa, because the classroom is the future. And that's the debate. So if people want to throw the issue of language, that Lesufi does not want language, Lesufi hates Africans, it's misplaced. I said it, and I want to say it now. All languages must be treated equally. And those that want to choose a certain language must be given the space and the latitude to be taught in that language. Where I disagree is where you think the language must be the entire school. I disagree. You can have Block A that wants to be taught in the mother language Afrikaans, and have Block B to be taught in English, and Block C to be taught in Zulu, or Block D to be taught in Xhosa, so that during break, all these children can play together. But if you feel a certain class deserves to be where they are on their own, I differ. And that's my position. And unfortunately, I've been misunderstood. As I said, people believe I'm targeting a certain language and others. I'm not targeting any language. And I said it to various formations that demographics in South Africa have changed drastically. You go to Centurion, the demographics, they have changed. So let's find a mechanism where if a certain language is preferred, protect that language. But if a certain language, people demand that it be introduced, find an easier mechanism to introduce that language rather than to resist. Because if you can't work that out, then you're having a problem. But as South Africa, time has arrived, good people. We need to put the politics of race behind and gallop as fast as possible to catch up with the world and deal with the real issues of a changing society, a changing world that need different skills. Until we do that, if you are still obsessed about who's black, who's white, who's speaking what, the world is not waiting for us. And our children have to compete with those children.
Thank you. I want to come to Professor Metcalfe. Professor Metcalfe, MEC Lesufi has referred to the past 25 years of ANC rule, and you were part of that. You were in his shoes a few years ago. He said that your generation tried to persuade, but that it's now time for action. Do you agree with that sentiment? And then also linked to that, there's often a debate about how much could still be blamed on the legacy of the past, not only apartheid point taken, also the history of colonialism, and how much of the blame must the ANC really now take after 25 years in terms of building schools,
Okay.
etc.?
Okay, so there's two big questions there. I'll take the second one first.
Sure.
I absolutely see every working day of my life the impacts of apartheid on schools, on teachers, and on learners. And people who wish to say that we should forget those impacts because time has passed. I think I can develop this further if you'd like to. I can talk about the complete overlay of physical infrastructure with education quality, with apartheid, with the old homelands. All the evidence shows it. So I would want to leave that as a very strong view. And if anyone says, no, apartheid still doesn't have an impact, then we'll have to open that discussion. The second question, which is the first one that you asked, is have we done enough? I think is the summary of that
And
question.
the approach is persuasion versus action, I guess.
We have a lot to do in this country to both understand the changes that are happening and to support people with those changes. So the complexity of educational change means that I would say, and the Premier of Gauteng established a group of social cohesion champions led by Van Makhosi, and I'm the deputy chair, and we did research with the education department in Gauteng, and we looked at a range of schools, schools that were in historically Indian, historically colored, historically African and white areas. All of those schools have changed enormously in terms of the learners that are attending the schools, in terms of less change, in terms of the teachers that are supporting the learners in that school. And the crying need in Gauteng and in other provinces that I work, which include Free State and KZN, is to support teachers more to understand those changes and to be able to provide an education that embraces all of the children. There's huge difficulties with children traveling great distances across unsafe spaces, and we can carry on about that, but let me pause and not talk too long. Whether there has been a switch from persuasion to, what's the word you use?
Action or more forceful action.
Yeah, now I'd say there's action from day one. I can give you lots of examples of that. What I think has become more pressing in our society is a sense that change is not happening quickly enough, that people feel excluded in real terms as well as emotionally, that in too many of our social and workspaces, assumptions of white superiority continue to dominate. I love the way that younger Africans, South Africans, don't stand for it. And I think we've all got to learn. But the starting point of the learning is to listen. The starting point of the learning is to stop assuming that the order that has been and that whiteness is correct. It requires humility, it requires beginning to understand perspectives, being open to new perspectives. Yeah.
Paul Colditz, I want to come to you. MEC Lesufi says it's not really about language. It's about non-racialism and opening up our schools and really turn them into places where children from a young age starts to appreciate and live diversity in all its forms and shapes. Surely that's not something you will disagree with.
Well, there are two things I'll disagree with. As far as the MEC is concerned, I mean, his attacks on Afrikaans schools and Afrikaans speaking people, and his mentioning of things such as Klein Basi is on the record. If he says it's not about language, I've heard him say that before, and we've had discussions, but that's not the image or the perception that the public outside there gets. As far as integration is concerned, yes, I agree. We've always, from our side, said we now have, and we've welcomed the non-racial education system. The other point that I'd like to disagree on with MEC Lesufi is his metaphor of Irish coffee, a white system and a black system. There's no longer such a thing. All former white schools have welcomed children of other cultures into their school. Not necessarily the same language, but language is a different issue that we can discuss later. The point is, you won't find in South Africa, as far as I know, a single school where you'll only find white children, white learners in that school. Teachers may be white. Teachers is another topic that we need to discuss. It's extremely difficult. It's extremely difficult to get teachers appointed. But remember, the appointments are made by the Department of Education, not by the school governing bodies, not by the school, not by the community. The appointments are made by the Department of Education. There's no such a thing, as far as I'm concerned, as a white and a black system. It's one single unitary system with different, because of circumstances, different compositions in the school. And language is one of them. You have English medium schools, you've just mentioned African language schools, very small percentage, extremely, far too low, and then only 5% Afrikaans medium schools. Obviously, in the Western Cape, you'll find in the so-called colored community, where the majority of people's of Afrikaans speaking, you'll find in a particular school only maybe some colored children, and here and there maybe a black African child. But those people live in communities that are Afrikaans speaking. And you can't blame the school or the system if the people are naturally attracted to that particular school, or if it's the nearest school for them, or if it's the only school for them.
I like the buzz in the audience, guys. Get your questions ready, write them down, keep them. We'll come to you in a bit. Dr. Khoza, you've had the advantage now of hearing all the panelists speak, so I want to ask you for just general feedback on what you've heard so far, but specifically talking to us about African languages, because I know that's your passion.
Exactly.
And this conversation is so often about Afrikaans.
Yes.
Can you bring in the African language perspective on this as well?
You see, I think the most important thing that we have to start with is locate the African languages in this whole debate. If we miss that, MEC, with due respect, I love you so much, you know that. But if we are going to define the language or understate the critical importance of the language in the classroom, we will not be able to achieve the results that we seek. Empirical studies, you will agree with me, have all pointed out that language is a single most important barrier to education in South Africa, which is why in South Africa, other people are even saying, you have schooling in South Africa, but you don't have education. People are going to school, but they are not being educated. And therefore, I am saying, the other thing that is very important about Afrikaans, which I think the ANC government, and I wanted to count myself, because I share that history, I'm part of that. One of the things that the ANC that I think may have failed to learn from the Afrikaners is the investment they did in the development and the elevation of the Afrikaans language, which is why, despite it being the newest language in South Africa, they were even able to export it to Namibia. We don't have a single African language that is even recognized in your day-to-day food packages. Even the papers that you read, I mean, even if you go to school and you are getting exam papers, they are written in English and Afrikaans. We have not addressed the plight of the June 1976 uprising. And it was linguicide. It was about linguicide. And that is why they revolted against Afrikaans, in as much as they were saying, given the circumstances, they spoke more about saying, we can't have this, because clearly you now had English and Afrikaans that were going to be the languages that were going to be used to study all the significant subjects. And the African languages were reduced as languages of tradition and culture. Yeah. And that has to change. Yeah. And I am saying it's not going to help us, MEC, to keep on saying, let's have Zulu there, let's have English there, and so forth. I am saying, and I have done the study, we need to have bilingualism in South Africa. Even the textbooks, this is the textbook I'm talking about, MEC, that I have done, caps aligned, that is both in isiZulu and English, so that there is alignment between what the child learns in isiZulu and English, or there is an alignment between what the child learns in isiPedi and Afrikaans. That is the kind of approach we need in this country if we are serious about social cohesion.
Yeah.
Can I please come in and support Dr. Khoza, but make one correction. She says bilingualism. Officially, the language policy adopted in 1997, but never implemented, speaks of additive multilingualism. So what we're doing from our side is to promote the language of learning and teaching, the LOLT, is the official language. We encourage, and that is policy and curriculum, you have to have a first additional language. And now, only in the past couple of years, the Department of Education has come with the IOR, the incremental introduction of African languages. We've introduced in our member schools African language long time ago as a third language, so that we can promote.
Why should it be the third? Why should it be the third? I have a problem with that. Because you are assuming that it's going to be the third option. The reality is that 79%, this is according to Statistics South Africa, 79% of the mother tongue languages in South Africa are African languages. And we literally black African languages account for 79%.
Sorry, you've misunderstood
and therefore we
You've
need
misunderstood me.
Let me help with this one. Let me help with this one. So I think what you're saying is, if we're working in a community in KwaZulu-Natal, which is isiZulu speaking, that's the first language.
First language.
And they need to incrementally add other languages. if you're working in an Afrikaans speaking, they'll start with Afrikaans and incrementally add.
Exactly.
But why I support you coming in is because that's not the norm. The assumption is always English or Afrikaans.
Exactly.
And we need to make it the norm.
Okay,
And then
can I go back to the man on the
Okay,
far
like-
right and just say he's got a budget? Okay, he's got a budget. Let me just try and help the MEC. He's got a budget. He doesn't need my help, but he's got a budget. And I suspect, MEC, it is, as much as we all want all 11 languages in all schools, it's just not affordable.
But until we treat all languages equally, we are not going to succeed. Until, and that's my point, that there must be no super language.
Exactly.
If you create an environment that a certain language is a super language, we've missed the point. The fight and the argument with those that are misunderstanding me is that I hate a certain language. My argument is very simple. Let's treat all languages equally. And there is history in this country that if you undermine other languages, you'll pay a heavy price. So I fully agree with Dr. Makhosi. I really don't even differ with her. It might be on emphasis, either of bilingual or other things. My argument is that the same investment we have in English, the same investment we have in Afrikaans, let it be the same investment in all other languages.
Exactly.
And that our children should be given a choice to choose which language they prefer to be taught.
Yeah.
And if we don't do that, we are not going to defend our education system. That's the first part. I want to go to the second part that was raised by Paul, that I'm attacking Africans. I just want him to quote what he said. It's on the public platform that I've said. I said, and I'm going to say, and if it's wrong, then they must blame themselves. When I grew to go and visit my mom as a domestic worker, I was told a daughter or a son is a clean bus. That's what I was told. When I went to visit my mom as a domestic worker, I was told when I arrived there, when I see the son of a boss, I must say, we're more a clean bus. And I'm saying it now. If there is a school for only clean bus, that school will not succeed in this province. All our schools belong to all our children. And all school facilities belong to all South Africans. If you want to privatize them on the basis of a language or on a basis of culture, you are getting it wrong. You must privatize it on the basis of access for everyone.
Paul Colditz, I'll come now to you to respond. I just want to go to Prof
It's
Metcalfe.
just, we have a long history, but this assertion that we must treat all languages equally, to my knowledge, and I've actually checked because one makes assumptions, there is no African language textbook on the approved list after grade 3 in any subject other than African literature. You cannot have a textbook in a school in South Africa.
It's next to you.
Yeah, but
I have them. They
No,
knew, though.
no,
I agree
no,
with
no.
Mary. They are not yet in the LTSM. You are
they
right.
are not.
Yet in the
they are
catalogue.
not approved. So, MEC
Yeah,
Lesufi,
you are absolutely
right.
This is not a criticism. It's to say this is what we have to do. So if you're going to stand and say we're going to treat all languages equally, and I, as Mary Satola, want my child to go to a school and learn in isiZulu, maths, science, I believe it's possible. The department has to actively take steps to develop and make sure that the textbooks are there. So
I agree with you, Mary.
Yeah.
Mary, I'm saying it's treatment equally. When you say treatment, it means the investment must be equally.
Exactly.
It means the training of educators must be equally. It
Exactly.
means that the development of that language must be equal.
Yeah.
But if you are treating one language or two languages as super languages, I will differ with you.
no, therefore, we're looking to you to lead us.
I'm leading
to
that.
make sure.
And that is
Good.
what I'm saying. We are persuading. People must understand this. People, so Adriaan, I'm taking time, I know. Adriaan, after 1994, we had an option in this country. After 1994, we had an option to say, you oppressed us. You gave us gutter education. You denied us to go to certain universities to study certain professions. Now we're in charge. The opposite must happen. We didn't take that route. We said we'll continue with your gutter education and change it as we move as a country. That decision that we made to compromise prosperity, people are seeing us as fools, that we are dumb, we didn't understand what we are doing. And that's the price people must know. That's the price people must know. We sacrificed our inner being for the sake of this country. And no one must think our sacrifices is because we're stupid.
I want to give Mr. Colditz an opportunity to respond. And MEC Lesufi, I just wanted to ponder on this for a second. You're referring to super languages the whole time, but what I'm hearing from the panel tonight is that actually the super language you must look at first is English, and that maybe English is that language. But let Mr. Colditz.
Yes, then, that's absolutely true. English is the super language, and English is the greatest barrier to South Africans to access to education, to quality education. When Mr. Lesufi says that all languages must be treated equally, well, let me finish this super language argument, and that is, the Afrikaans-speaking community doesn't say they want Afrikaans to be treated as a super language. They want Afrikaans to be respected in accordance with our mantra in our constitution.
Section 5 of the schools.
Section 5.
Section 5 of the Schools Act deals with the policy. What I'm talking about is united in our diversity. Now, very little and nothing has been done. Actually, nothing has been done to bring the indigenous African languages, the 9 of them, recognized as official languages in the Constitution at the same level as Afrikaans and English. So government is to blame for that. The Constitution says the state has the responsibility to respect, protect, promote, and fulfill the rights of the people of South Africa. And as far as language is concerned, and as far as the 9 indigenous languages that are not as super developed as Afrikaans and English is concerned, government has done nothing. The best they've done is to start with the incremental introduction of African languages.
Paul,
Can I ask you something on that point?
Respectfully, I differ with you. The problem of blaming who is not developing without blaming who oppressed those languages first is an issue here. Those languages could not develop because they were deliberately denied resources. They were deliberately denied the relevant investment that they need. That is why. Sure. And I'm saying in the last 25 years, we've been trying to persuade each other here. And that persuasion is quite clear it's not working. Yeah. So we need to find a way of working together. Because let me tell you, the increase and the development of the far left group, it means that they think persuasion has failed. And when they come in, they will do wrong things. So South Africans must understand we need each other more than any other time. We need to work together, understand each other's fears, and deal with those particular fears. And I can tell you, the fears of the constituency that Paul represents is that if we have black people there, the standard will go down. That's their fears. Their fears is that if we have black educators there, you are inviting SADU. That's their fears. And I want to tell them, I have the same fear of standards going down. I have the same fear if SADU controls rather than teach. So we share the same frustration. So let's not use our frustrations to undermine each other's existence. Let's use our fears to build a better South Africa that we can live for our children. And that's my argument.
My constituency comprises all South Africans. We represent...
Let him finish.
I did not interrupt you.
It's not me, Paul. And I'll not interrupt you, and I'm sorry if you feel
Paul, continue.
The point is, we have
Constitution, I just
schools from every section of the community, from all quintiles, from all communities in the country as members. So I'm not a language organization, I'm an education organization and a voluntary association. We do our best to promote multilingualism. We do our best to promote mother tongue education, to promote quality education, to promote value-driven education, to promote the values of the Constitution of human dignity, equality and freedom. And that includes the freedom of choice of communities to choose whether they want their education in Sesotho or in Afrikaans or in English, and the individual person in terms of Section 29 of the Constitution. I won't respond to the Kleinbasie thing.
Can I just ask you something, Paul? Because I really think we need to start talking about solutions and practicalities. We no denial in 1994 the so-called Model C Afrikaans schools were much better equipped, much better resourced.
All Model C schools, not only Afrikaans schools, English
all Model
schools
C
as well.
schools were equipped. We cannot turn the clock back. We cannot say what could we have done better, because I'm sure we can talk about that for another 2 hours. But we can start today. And your constituency, or a large part of the case you make, is for single medium schools, for single medium Afrikaans schools, because of the constitutional right of the Afrikaans child to receive education, and because those schools, and because those schools are full, like in the case of Oorverval. What I want to ask you is, do you not think that pragmatically, at this moment in time where we find ourselves, with that party on the left that MEC has spoken about, with what we are feeling in our society, that it's not time to consider opening those schools to become dual language schools, to at least invite one more language group? I'm not saying English, any language group. In Pretoria, probably Sesotho or Setswana. But to open up those schools, those resources, and bring that in. Why is that not something?
Well, number one, it has happened. It has happened already. Number two, the most important thing which I told MEC Lesufi last year is there are two problems. The funding model which the minister determines has as presumption and assumption that all schools are single medium schools. We know that multilingual education is much more expensive, particularly parallel medium education. And if you're going to have 3 languages, it will even be more expensive. And the state's funding model doesn't make provision for that. So the moment you go, if you're a single medium school, whether you're Sesotho, Afrikaans, Zulu, or whatever school, English or whatever, and you decide to introduce another language as a language of learning and teaching, your costs increase. And unless you have a very rich constituency, like the Paul Roos's, like the Grey College, like Parel Boys High, where they have dual medium or parallel medium instruction, where old boys and the community have the resources to fund that. It's not possible. In your poorer and middle class communities, it's not possible to sustain parallel medium schooling in the long run unless the state comes to the party and funds it. The second point is, what does the post-provisioning of educators look like? Once again, it's regulations determined by the minister to be implemented by the MEC and the HOD. It doesn't make sufficient provision for multilingual teaching. So it gives you, if you have, for example, let's take grade 8, you have 40 Afrikaans or English medium learners in a class. You have to open now a second class for the second language. What does the state give you? It gives you 0.1 extra teacher. Instead of giving you teachers, you have 2 classes. You now have to have 2 teachers. The state gives you only 0.1.
Okay, I want the MEC to come on the funding. I just want to go to Dr. Khoza first.
I'll be brief.
MEC, I must come to Dr. Khoza first.
Yeah, no, there is one thing that I think we need to deal with, and I'm sorry, I do challenge covert racism wherever it rears its ugly head. you seem to have a problem with the introduction, incremental introduction of African languages.
Not at all.
And if you are doing that, you are therefore against this very constitution. Because this constitution, chapter 1, subsection 6, subsection 2, says recognizing the historically diminished status, use and status of the indigenous languages of our people. And you must understand that when we are talking about the diminished status, we are talking about Black African languages primarily in this.
Yes.
It says the state must take practical and positive measures to elevate the status and advance the use of these languages. Therefore, the reason why, by the way, for your own information, why MEC Panyaza Lesufi is the political darling of most Black South Africans. They may hate the ANC, but they still want him there. That is because he has been able to stand tall despite all the noises that are coming, to stand for us, because we do need people in that power who are going to defend us as Black Africans. We are tired of being absent in our presence, in our country of birth, when we make up 79% of the population. And I think you must just open up to that reality. Unfortunately for you, it's either you accept that African languages have to be introduced in every school in South Africa, or else forget it.
Yeah.
Well, sorry, I must come in here
Let me
because she
come.
clearly
Can Professor
misunderstood me.
Metcalfe just come in?
Yeah, I'd like to come in because I've been listening quite carefully to following your lead. What do we agree and what don't we agree?
I tried to.
Yeah, and I think it's useful to go back to that, because I think that there's agreement that there's a history of language oppression. You spoke to it eloquently in terms of spectrum. The Constitution has explicitly tried to address that. I think that there's agreement that as a consequence of that history and our own failures to do what's required, we have not developed and created spaces for African languages. That has to change because it affects children's learning, but it also affects their sense of self and sense of self. The third thing that I think we must agree on, and I couldn't understand why it seemed like we weren't, the state has a particular responsibility.
Exactly.
So if we agree on that, that's good.
We'll play,
Okay.
that's what I'm doing.
Now, the practicalities of how we move forward become quite complex. And I don't think that Paul is wrong to raise issues of how does the funding model help us. I think that together we've got to look at that. But if I just made a list of different places. If I think of the language complexity and communities of Kuruman, of Katu, of Empangeni, of Harib, of Dobsonville, of Chiawelo, of Centurion, the configurations are so different. So we can't fixate on a particular configuration. We have to adopt core principles that support children's right to use a language that they can learn in, which is primarily mother tongue, and which affirms their self-esteem in all of these areas. And if we agree on that, then the way forward is what is the configuration of policies and funding and collaboration and supporting each other to achieve that for all of our children.
MEC, I want you to talk, but please talk to funding as
Yeah.
well.
And that's my issue. Let's go to the issue of, I agree with many genuine, I'll agree with on the funding part. I don't agree with Paul, he's defending it. Let me tell you why. You go, and maybe it's not aware, you go to each and every township, schools that are poor, what do they have? They've got English, they've got Afrikaans, they've got Xhosa, they've got Zulu, that are poor. Those that are rich say we can't afford it. What do they afford? Let me tell you what they afford. With SGB funds,
Exactly.
they will rather appoint a polo coach for 2 people. They will rather appoint a cricket coach for 9 people. And these are the same people that they say they can't afford. That can't be. It's a will to build a non-racial South Africa.
Exactly.
So if there is no will to build a non-racial South Africa, forget. And that is why, and I'm sorry, good people, I'm glad Mary said that the state must play a role. I will play a role. I will play that role without fear, without prejudice. If non-racialism is a sin in this country, let people rise up and tell me it's a sin. If non-racialism is a crime in this country, let people rise up and say it's a crime. We have people that have resources that claim our languages are not important. Polo is important. We've got people that are poor, that are trying even to have an Afrikaans teacher in the townships. But people that were extending a hand of friendship, they are biting that hand. They're identifying me as a problem to hide behind the broomstick of their ills. Today, they don't want to be called clean buses, but when I was young, they were beating me to call them clean buses. Beating me. You could not move and say, if you say, no, it's Van der Merwe, they will hit me and say it's not Van der Merwe, it's clean bus. Suddenly, they are forgotten. Clean bus is a bad name. Ooh, New South Africa.
MEC, can I ask you this question? So, accepting what you've just said, the examples you've given of the polo, accepting that there are also other Afrikaans single medium schools that don't have polo, that are probably in less rich neighborhoods. Let's think of Pretoria West, for example. West, right? Not East, yes, West. If a school like that comes to you and say, we really, really want to introduce Sesotho, for example, as our second language, will you help us with funding?
I've done that. I can give you an example. Go to Montana.
Cool.
Montana was a single Afrikaans medium. They've got an African language. I bought the textbook, I hired the teachers, I make the material available. And there are many schools that are coming. You go to Krugersdorp. There was a school that was single Afrikaans medium. They came to us and we made a budget of 600 million. We said to the institutions, we are available to give you support to change. And we are not imposing anyone. We are saying we are persuading you to understand the need to build another. Let me tell you, fellow South Africans, if we can't get education right, we're not going to get the country right. If we can't get the skills right, we're not going to get the economy right. And if you can't get the economy right, we have a doomed country. So it starts in the classroom. If our children don't know what, I had a teacher from King Edward. My child went to that school. They are working very hard to build another South Africa. I went to GP. They are singing Zulu songs through rugby games. So we are excluding a very important section of society that feel that they are living in their own world alone. Go to that. I've made an analysis, and I hope Paul will not dispute that. I made an analysis of all Afrikaans-speaking schools, and I said to them, why are you not taking history as a subject? If they don't want to, majority of them don't want to take history. Not even Zulu. They don't want to take history as a subject. And I asked them, why? They said, no, it's embarrassing us. So I'm saying, all African schools, go and make analysis how many of them are taking history. So if they can't take history, you can imagine how will they take Zulu. So I'm not anti, and I want to put it clearly on your platform, and thanks Adriaan for putting this. I'm not anti-mother tongue. I'm not anti-Afrikaans. Actually, my name is Hendrik. So I can't hate honestly, that's my name. My name is Hendrik. So I can't hate my name. My child went to an Afrikaans school. My daughter went to an Afrikaans school. So I have nothing against that. Afrikaans is one of the South African languages.
Yes.
And all languages must be embraced. What I differ, and I will differ, is that if you feel the school is not full, and if it's not full because you want to protect a language, you are converting a classroom into a canteen, you are converting a classroom into gymnasium, so that other people must not come. I will differ with that. But if you say, we want a language, we can occupy this block, we can have an extra class in this block, I will appreciate that. You go to Stellenbosch, there was Afrikaans. Children there were playing rugby together. You go to Tekis, there was Afrikaans. They were in the same rugby team. Why can't we have it in our schools with our children. Good
We
people.
have it. We have
I'm addicted to non-racialism. I'm addicted to it. But I hate racism with a passion.
Paul?
Yeah. My apologies to Dr. Khoza. I must have expressed myself very badly.
That's how you are. No, that's how you are.
That's my problem with him. He doesn't listen. Now he has to apologize again. We are the people who supported the 1997 policy of additive multilingualism. We fought for the introduction of African languages in our schools. The Department of Education, and in particular the Gauteng Department of Education, have promised to provide teachers. They haven't. We've encouraged our school governing bodies from all communities throughout the country to make sure that if they don't get the teachers, fund them through parent contributions to promote multilingualism. We're not against the incremental introduction of African languages at all. I'm sorry, you must have misunderstood me.
No, I didn't. But you wanted to have it as a fat language.
Yeah.
You said a fat language.
Yes, that's what you said.
Colleagues, let's wrap up. We've got 5 minutes for the panel before we open up to Twitter, which might be a dangerous thing, and to the audience. So I want to start with Dr. Khoza right next to me for final remarks before we open up to the floor.
Well, to me, what is going to be very important going forward is that we need to recognize the fact that psychological genocide in South Africa took the form of linguicide. And unless we begin to commit ourselves in developing and elevating the languages, African languages, as instruments of prosperity, this country is doomed. And we must kiss quality education goodbye. Therefore, it is very important that we support the government policy, because this is the most bold step that this government has taken of now in ensuring that this incremental introduction of African languages becomes compulsory in all South African schools. We cannot define out 79% of the population. That is an injustice.
Thank you. Mary Metcalfe?
Are we all taking a turn to say things? Okay,
Yes.
so definitely we need to be able to make sure that more South African young people are learning a range of South African languages. That is likely to succeed in schools and in learning environments where those languages are deeply respected and where the teachers of the variety of languages are recognized as valuable members of the staff and of the community. If we're going to achieve social cohesion, which is very greatly at risk, the affirmation of language as part of that social cohesion is going to be critical. And I love your phrase about languages of prosperity. The dominance of English is, as you said, one of the greatest barriers in terms of all learners learning.
Paul Colditz?
I wanted to go much wider than merely languages, but I'll take this opportunity to disagree a little bit with Dr. Khoza. She says we must take incremental introduction of African languages seriously. We must go much further than that and fully implement the policy of additive multilingualism. And I'm not suggesting that the Indigenous African language should be a third language. Every school should at least have 3 languages, at least 2 as subjects. It could be the first language is Sesotho, the second language English, the third Afrikaans or Zulu or whatever.
Okay.
That is the point I made.
Thank you.
I would have loved that we should discuss how do we fix our schools. That was the subtext of our discussion. Maybe we should
We'll have many more
one.
conversations. MEC, final remarks from you?
I'm truly calling for all parents, all SGBs, and all stakeholders within the education system the sooner we pass this debate of who's rich, who's poor, the sooner we all combine our heads and say, this country, this beautiful country belongs to all of us. That the skills, my parents came to Johannesburg looking for gold. That gold is gone. The future gold is the children that are in our classrooms. They are the ones that will create jobs. They are the ones that are going to be innovative and creative. So let's build that future for our children. There must be no parent, which is unfortunate. And that's why Paul and the constituency that is representing have this thing. There must be no school. When a black child comes in, they are taking their children out. There must be no school that behaves like that. That is why I will defend King Edward. I'll defend GP. They said, if you want to take your child, take your child. But here, we stand for non-racialism. Until we do that, we are not going to build this beautiful country. I can tell you, there is no one that derives pleasure to see that our grade 4s can't read. Yeah. No one. There's no one that derives pleasure that we are performing as bad as an education system in this country. What we need to do is to put our minds together regardless of race, religion, and creed. And that's my closing remarks.
Thank you very much to a fantastic panel. We're now going to open to questions from the floor. Before I go there, the first question comes from Christopher on Twitter. And Christopher asks, and any one of my panelists can take this question. No, it's specifically addressed to MEC Lesufi. Will MEC Lesufi commit to supporting low-fee independent schools started by black African educators?
No, they're laws. I mean, they're existent in our constitution, so it's not my choice. They're there. Anyone who wants to open a form of a school can open a form of a school. But let me raise the subtext to that thing. We're seeing now in Gauteng, Doctor and Prof, that there is a sudden increase of something that is called homeschooling, where parents are taking their children out of the education system, say that you are homeschooling them. But you go to those homeschooling, is another new form of a school. They are taking them to another class of some retired teacher that is teaching them. I'm not against it, but it must not be abused to circumvent the need for our children to study together. But in terms of private schools, independent schools, I'm a proponent of it. Let me tell you why I support private and independent school. If I'm spending 20 Rand on child X, and the parent of child X decide to take to private school, I have an extra 20 Rand to spend on another child. So I will never oppose private or independent school.
I'm going to ask you to raise your hand. If you are so lucky to get a microphone, please stand up and take the microphone. Please stand up when you ask your question. Please direct the question to someone specific on the panel and be crisp. Where's my colleague with the mics? Let's take 3 for the first round. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Greetings to everyone. My name is Nongo Solo. I'm a co-founder and a managing director of Abacha Force of Change. In fact, when Dr. Makhosi Khoza was quoting people that are saying in South Africa we don't have education, we just have a schooling system, she's quoting our organization. Mr. Lesufi knows our organization. In fact, it's probably one of the reasons why when we booked our seat here, we were told it's fully booked. But we made means because we are a force of change, we don't negotiate change. So
always welcome.
Thank you. My worry as I'm sitting and listening is the fact that we continuously seek to reform. One of the campaigns that we are running right now is to say, in South Africa, education is the fundamental liberator. In everywhere, actually. Yes. And education is the fundamental oppressor. And he's right to say that if we don't fix our education, we'll never fix South Africa. But we believe one of the first ways to fix South Africa is to depoliticize education completely.
Yes.
Okay, can you get to your question, please?
So my question is, before I even get to my, he spoke about which what is affected me. As a minister, he spoke about schools that are not, as the MEC, he spoke about schools that are not prepared to make space for other learners, but instead are prepared to bring coaches. And we have a different view. There's nothing wrong with that. As an MEC in Ekurhuleni, he has built a school that doesn't have school halls. He has built a school that doesn't have a swimming pool. He has built a school that doesn't have a soccer ground. And our question is, for how long are you going to reform education? Because we have to revolutionize education. We are in a status quo where education system makes certain children feel like they have no value. What's wrong with me being a dancer? Because the education system we have in South Africa says there's everything wrong with you being a dancer, and there's everything right with you being a mathematician.
Okay.
And that's the situation we are sitting in. The schools that we have, we are building MEC, must accommodate every value, every talent that we have.
Okay,
So
I
that
think
we
we've got your question. Thank you very much. Second question. Please stand up when you speak. Thank you. Let's just hold a second. The mic is not on. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
So my question, Adriaan, must first go to you because I don't know if we are going to extend the debate to talk about school violence. This was really good, but I was hoping you would say something about school violence because we have done some work.
So
in that
can
area.
it's fine. I have a question directed to the panel about that topic. That's fine.
Okay, all right. So, MEC, I know your passion about peace and nonviolence in schools. And we did a study as the University of KwaZulu-Natal, looking at teacher misconduct, not necessarily violence, but when teachers misconduct themselves in South Africa, what do they do? To our surprise, 8 out of 10 times, when teachers in this country misconduct themselves, it is violence against other teachers, it is violence against students, and it is violence against the system, the parents, yes. So 8 out of 10 times, it's verbal violence, physical violence, and sexual violence. The most sufferers of teacher on student and teacher on teacher violence are schoolgirls, followed by schoolboys. You may not have time to answer this, but the research we did was not for just publication in a journal. Yes, we published the study in the Journal of Psychology in Africa for those who are interested. But it is not for that. It is for us to design interventions, which we have done. Interventions that look at whole school development, because in schools, where you have these extreme incidents of violence, these incidents are not just isolated. The schools in which these incidents occur, these are also schools where you don't have great academic achievement, where you have
Sorry
high
to
levels
interrupt
of
you.
Absenteeism.
Can I ask for the question to MEC?
Yes,
So that we can
and
move?
the question, MEC, is who do we go to in your office? Who do we liaise with if we researchers want to bring on board or approach the department with interventions and strategies to curb violence?
Stand up, let me
Who
see.
do we talk to?
to him. To him.
Yes.
Thank you for that question. We'll go to the next one. James, I can't see you. Oh, there's a learner. Hello.
Yes.
Hi,
Welcome.
thank you. My name is Yolanda Makuka. I'm from Charlotte Maclecker Secondary School in Tembisa. My first question was, I support mother tongue teaching and learning. So I would like to ask, but what do we do in a school where we have a lot of languages? So which languages do we prioritize? And which languages must be taught in those schools, and that can be a common language for all learners to understand and accommodate everyone. And the second question is that it's to our MEC. How are you planning to fix our schools in the next coming 100 days? Since the space and environment we are in contributes a lot in our academies. And the third question is that we're moving to the fourth industrial revolution, and we're learning with the traditional ways. So what's your plan with us moving with the times? Because it means that we're going to change. It's a drastic change of careers, and we need to keep up with because we are preparing us for the workspace. And if we are being prepared for the workspace with the traditional learning, then how do we accommodate ourselves in the next fourth industrial revolution.
Thank you, Yolanda.
That's nice.
Yolanda, you must consider journalism as a career. You ask very good questions.
Yes.
Let's take one more question, Carl. One more question before we open up to the panel. Thank you.
Hello. Mr. MEC, I'm a boarding mom. I'm an Afrikaans boarding mom at a school where it is mostly, I think 20% of the boys are white boys. And my question is, we can sit here all night and debate on the languages, and I agree with everyone. I heard everyone's points, and I also believe a child should be educated in their language. But my problem is that how are we going to stop the abuse at the schools? How are we going to stop the corrupt governing bodies? How are we going to stop educators that's not qualified? And until this is not sorted out, it starts at management, it starts at, Mr. MEC, all due respect, it starts with you, and then with management to sort out all these differences at school, that we don't have another Forest Hill boy lying next week that won't have the opportunity to be taught in his language. So please, can people start telling us when all this abuse is going to be stopped at schools? Boys get raped, girls get raped. It just never stops. Every week we have another child dying.
Thank you. Those were hard questions. MEC, can I start with you? I think the first one was about the resources. The question is, so the point was taken about the polo fields, but the question is why do you build new schools that don't have resources for kids to develop as actors or sports people?
I want to invite him. I want to invite her. I want to invite her to the schools I've built. Since we came here in 2014, we've built 60 schools, new beautiful schools. And all those schools have sporting facilities. Yeah. So if there is a school that does not have a sporting facility that is new under my authority, I'm saying if asked the question, let's respond. We have built schools. I can give you a list of those schools. There is nothing that is signed off that does not have a sporting facility. It might be either it's still phase 2 or 3, there is pressure they want to occupy now. But I'm telling you, it's standard. Actually, I'm fighting with National because National says you can't build a 60 million school. Schools must be 30 million. The 30 million school is the one without a library, without a laboratory, without sporting facilities, without all these things. And that's the reason why we are building the kind of schools that we have. I'll give you the list of
Does
those
it cost
schools.
60 million rand to build a school?
Yeah, more than that. More than that. Let me go to the KZ study. Please, I'll really love to have it. Please share the study. I'll work with you. I'll check. Because I think I needed something research that can inform us on some of these things. So please make it available so that we can attend to all the issues that have been raised. Yolanda, we have taken a decision. I know Charlotte Macklege very well. You can't have that kind of school named after a heroine of our struggle in that particular state. We've published it. We've put it in the public space. All mobile schools in Gauteng will fall by 2023. We've got a plan, we've got a budget, and they have been eradicated as I'm speaking to you now. So your school is in that list. All mobile schools and all asbestos schools. And I know Ramulifo will ask me about asbestos schools. I can tell you, the democratic government has not built even a single asbestos school. It's only those that hated us that built these asbestos schools. But we'll eradicate them. We'll eradicate them by 2023 in Gauteng. Don't give me a deadline that I don't know. Because the other people said that they must be removed by 2020. I can say yes to please you, but I know it won't happen. It will only be removed in 2023 because we've got the money, we've got the budget, we've got even each and every school, we've got their new plans. So it will be eradicated in 2023. I share your frustration on common language. I share your frustration of other languages. That is the debate here, that township schools are carrying the language burden at the expense of those that don't want the language. Because some people might move to another school, but they can't because if they go to that school, there's no African language. Actually, there are parents that are trapped in debt now because they've taken their children to a former Model C school. Now they can't afford, they can't even take out their children to go back to the township or to go to another school because those children never studied any language. And therefore they are trapped in debt and they end up being taken to credit bureaus and other related matters. So I share that particular aspect. You know, if there's something that people will tell you, even my office, if I'm in a management meeting that I'm told a child has been attacked, a child has been raped or killed, I will drop everything to go and protect that child. But this has been a reactionary mode. It must be proactive now. And that is why we have taken a decision that let's identify the 500 bullies in our schools, whether they are girl children or boy children, so that we train and intervene before they hurt another learner, including educators. Let's identify the educators that have a potential to harm other educators or to harm other children, and we intervene before they do that. So that's the support that we'll provide. But count on my support. There must be no victim that must not be supported, because schools should be the safest place, actually, in any other country.
Paul Colditz, did you want to comment on corrupt SGBs?
I want to go to the two speakers who raised the issue of language and abuse and ill discipline and misbehavior at schools. We have only ourselves to blame. Schools are mirroring what's happening in society. The MEC, you can't do anything to it in isolation. Every South African must take responsibility to change the culture of violence, to change the culture of non-compliance with laws that we experience outside of the school. No teacher, no learner learns at school, is taught by the school to misbehave, to abuse other people, to kill people, to rape, and to assault, and to bully. They learn that from outside of the school gates, and they bring that into the school because they see it in society. They see you solve your differences through violence, and they take it to school and they think they can repeat it there.
Point taken.
What we must do is the schools can act as centers of creating value-driven schools and value-driven society, because the school can and has access to the local community. As far as corrupt SGBs are concerned, you'll always find the 10% that do not comply with the laws. There are procedures in terms of the Schools Act and in terms of the regulations for school governing bodies. Section 18A, the one that you referred to, deals with corrupt. And you're welcome. On our website, you'll get the information. You can contact us. If it's a member of ours, we'll address it.
Please also use the opportunity tonight to bring up those issues to the MEC and Mr. Colditz. Dr. Khoza?
Oh, first of all, let me just thank Yolanda. I feel so optimistic about this country. When I hear of the quality of the questions that you have asked. And one of the things that you have asked, which I think is very important, and I think as panelists we have to respond to, you have raised the issue around globalization and around the choice factor in terms of the language that should be. The reality of the situation is that where we are right now, notwithstanding its colonial past, we may like or dislike the English language. Truth be told, if we want our African children to prosper and to be able to access global opportunities, we have to ensure that they learn both languages, which is why earlier on I was talking about bilingualism. And what we have started doing, currently the problem in schools in South Africa, MEC, which you have to know, the problem with African languages is that you have the architecture of African languages is wrong, fundamentally flawed.
And weak as well.
First of all, you use two systems of the noun arrangement. Okay, and you have Karl Meinhof, a German linguist, and you have C.M. Doak, which is who was a British-born linguist, and both of them, they are both of their noun arrangement system is fundamentally flawed, and this is not just about isiZulu, it's about all the other languages. We've started with isiZulu, but the intention is to ensure that at least we introduce bilingual materials. By bilingual materials, at this stage, we are not necessarily defining Africans out, but we are saying the majority of African children right now, and we have to be unapologetic about this. We are saying these all the textbook in South African schools, and they have to be accessible on the app.
I agree.
You know, they've got to be in the African language as well as in English, because we want them to access the global opportunities, and that is the reality. We don't want to define them out of the competition, global competition.
Yes.
They have to be globally competitive.
Indeed. Can I open for another round of questions? James, where are the bike? Thank you. At the back.
Okay, thanks so much for having me. My name is Tracy Malana. I'm from Equal Education. Firstly, I wanted to correct MEC Lesufi. According to the law that states what a school should look like, minimum norms and standards for school infrastructure, it says that all schools that are made up of inappropriate infrastructure, including asbestos, wood, zinc, mud, should be eradicated by 2026. So all 2016, sorry. So all MECs, including the minister, are guilty of, not complying with that law.
I was not an MEC by then.
But you, yeah, but you had your term, and you are still the MEC. It's
Let's
fine.
get to the question.
The question that I wanted to ask is around the. So I read some of the studies around the Gauteng primary literacy and maths strategy, the GPLMS. Yes. I wanted to ask what happened to that and why is it not a priority in Gauteng? Because according to me, I believe it's a very important study because it speaks about the triple cocktail, which includes mother tongue resources in classroom, which includes coaching support for teachers, which includes lessons planned for teachers. And it also states that we can improve the children's literature by 40% if we were to implement it. So I wanted to know what happened to that study. And the last question is around how is your department, maybe including the Department of Basic Education, planning to enroll the EGRS study, keeping in mind that there is no reading benchmark across languages that exists, if I'm not lying. And also keeping in mind that the graded readers across the languages also, that, sorry.
Thank you. Thank you. Let's move to a second question. Thank you, Carl.
Sanibona. Igama
Yes.
ngisimelangeni
Well done.
kube kwaba nombuzo ukuthi yini esingayenza ukuthi ngikhona kungabi neviolence ezikolweni. Uyabona impendulo yalombuzo izikabi. Uma ingane zethu zingase zithole into ezifundiswayo epractical, for example ukwakha ama skills ngibusiswetsho nje zifundise lento zibe yazi from isikole ezincane eprimary kuya esecondary school. Uyabona uma sezikhulile because ungathi yabheka manje sithola ukuthi kuna 57% yabantu abangasebenzi abancane. Yingoba bafunda izinto abazifundiswe ngabantu abafika eAfrica basicolonize. Sebefunda lezo zinto ukuthi ngona beimpress abanye abantu abangasibona. Uyabona uma kodwa befunda into zokwakha bafunda ama skills njengoba nje usicheche wonke nje ayezandla. Ngiyathembisa ngeke kube nento okuthiwa yi-child teacher esikolweni. Uzomchana unteacher kade ubupractical. Uzomchana unteacher ubuyenza into ezandla esikolweni. Mfowethu Lesufi nawo Makhosi. Ngicabanga ukuthi ngibona yinto esingayenza singama-Africans. Singama-Africans silele man. Silele kakhulu sifunda izinto zakumanye amazwe. Silele kakhulu asivukeni. Uma singavuka angeke uzwe ngithema ngikhula mina. Umama ubengitshela ukuthi ngikona mntanami njengoba uye esikolweni manje. Uthisha uzoba ubaba wakho no mama wakho. Noma uthisha ngakushaya, okushayela ukuthi ufunde. So uma uzobuya ekhaya, ukhala uthisha ungishayile, so balekela ukufunda, then unenkinga nami ngizokushaya. Manje eningizimu Afrika uma umntwana eshayiwe ugijima ekhaya uyakwazi ukuthi uzothola ukhuseleka lapho. So uma umntwana eshaywa akashaywa ngoba enze into engalangqondo kodwa ushaywa ngoba efuna ukufundiswa. Uyangizwa Makhosi?
Ngiyakuzwa
So-
kodwa kuhambisana nako okunye okushoyo baba.
Ngelinye ngizohambisana nako asithembe isikhathi sabe singakapheli and ama-African sabe singakapheli futhi.
Can we move to the next question?
Yeah, sure.
Thank you very much. And let's take a third question for this round. Thank you, sir.
Evening, everyone.
I've worked that
Bye. Ma'am Khoza, my name is Paul Maluleka, a PhD student in history education at Wits University. I think what's missing here in this debate is around ideologies or ways of knowing and being that inform education. So it's all and well to teach maths in isiZulu or English or whatever language. But if the ideologies are still Eurocentric, if the ideologies that inform maths are still trans-American, we're actually not doing anything. So that's when decolonization and Africanization comes in. So if you look at the 1980s, there was a committee which was called the National Education Crisis Committee, which said we need to move our education to be a people's education. Post 1994, we had about 4 or 5 curriculums. Curriculum 2005, NCS, RNCS, and now CAPS. What they're doing essentially is to promote what in academic spaces is called coloniality, meaning what the ANC-led government has done in terms of transforming education is nothing. In fact, what the mission education system, the apartheid education system has been promoting, has been promoted within a democracy. So I think the debate, as much as language is very important, the debate should move towards what actually underpins subjects, disciplines in basic education as well as in higher education.
Thanks.
So my question to the MEC, do you actually have a unit in basic education, for an example, which looks at decolonization as well as Africanization of our education system? Because I can teach history about liberation, for an example, but I can teach it from an Afrikaner perspective. You see, so there's no point in having 1976 in the curriculum, but if it's still taught in a Eurocentric, trans-American or transatlantic perspective. So the debate should move towards ways of knowing and being.
Okay.
Ontology and epistemology. How do we actually transform those?
Thank you very much. Let's move to the panelists, starting with you, MEC, if you want to start with the first question.
Are you sure you want to start with me, Adriaan?
All the questions were directed to you.
Adriaan, sorry, I think I missed a question that was raised by Yolanda in terms of the 4th Industrial Revolution and that we are still using the old mechanism to teach China. I think in Gauteng it's different. So we have made a huge investment in ensuring that our learners are on the paperless platform. I think we started with grade 12, we went to grade 11, 10. We are now doing it at grade 9. So it's not enough because we're doing it as a province rather than as a country. So we're quite thrilled when the president said that he's coming into that particular sector. to assist us. So we'll attend to that thing. Equal education, let me tell you, if you need somebody that loves your program, that support your program, that will forever do whatever that you call, you have a person in me. And you know that. I attended your first audit on toilets. What happened? We changed all toilets in Gauteng. All of them. Out of your own report. So if you come and say we are not responding to the norms that were signed by people who didn't provide resources for them to be attended to, don't blame me. Blame the Minister of Finance. Because I don't release. People signed without putting the financial commitment. We went out of our way as a province, because we support your call. We went out of our way, we raised 8.4 billion rands to eradicate all the schools. You can go to Noord-Geser. It was an asbestos school. As I'm speaking to you now, we have demolished that school. A school is about to be launched next month, a beautiful school in that area. Go to Restefal. It was an asbestos school. The school is up, rising. You can quote many schools that we have changed. So you have a partner in me. Instead of working together, let's not attack each other unnecessarily. I saw you demonstrating at the SOPA. I just felt it's so unfortunate. You have the person that agrees with you, and people believe that you are not held accountable when you are dealing with these things. But you have the right to do. GPLMS, it was a program. It was a program that the department introduced. We loved it. Prof Mary will tell you. We gave it to Prof to spread it all over the province. So we loved that program. So it was a campaign. We've now institutionalized it. So it's still within the department, and it's been institutionalized. It's been implemented. So we have not discarded it. You raised one study I didn't know, so I don't want to answer something if I misunderstood you. Mr. Mlagen, you raised an issue about that we are sleeping, that we must wake up. Actually, we are not sleeping, we are snoring, if I have to put it that way. We are snoring, we must wake up. But let me warn you.
Thank you.
We must carry all South Africans together to the future South Africa that we need. We must not leave anyone behind, regardless on how we differ. I might be strong on other people that want access, but I will defend those people if people believe they must be excluded. All of us must build this truly non-racial South Africa so that this country can be a country for all. It must not be a country for few that we need something above other people. Baumaluleke, you raised the issue of ideology. I agree with you. You know, South Africans must, and I don't know how to respond to this. South Africans must appreciate that we chose a long road to defend this country. We had an option to take a shortcut, but the consequences were going to be severe. Let me give you an example. If we said to all parents, we want a decolonized new education system. I know you're under pressure, Adriaan. I want to just put this point. We want a decolonized new South Africa. We want better teachers. And said to parents, keep your children at home for 4 years. We are still training teachers to be appropriate. We are still writing new textbooks. We are still writing. You will be the first one to fight us. You can't have these children for 4 years doing nothing. So we changed the engine of the aeroplane while the aeroplane was flying. And therefore we are accused that we have left out things. So I agree with you. The speed was not faster enough to cover the ground that you have said. And I will be the first one to, and I know the minister, maybe it's because he's influenced by a husband, Professor Matole Motseha. I know the minister is very strong on the decolonization unit in national so that we can change. I'm tired of me studying about Animal Farm and my children coming to study about Macbeth when there are books that are written by South Africans that our children must also know. There must be Z.K. Matthews. There must be Eskia Mpatlele. We are tired of Macbeth. It can't be Macbeth all generation after generation. So I agree with you. But we need the political will at the appropriate level to push for this transformation. Children of former Modlisi School, children of Paul Scott's constituency, they must know who Chris Hani is, who Steve Biko is. We have known Van Riebeck. It's their turn now to know who's Chris Hani. So I support that. I support that.
Prof Metcalfe, you wanted to say something?
No.
Not. Dr. Khoza?
No, I wanted to address the question of decolonization and Africanization. Especially you touched on a subject matter that is closest to my heart. You know, what MEC, I want you to note this. We conducted a study. We just wanted you to know how many teachers of mathematics in South Africa actually understand the Libombo bone. The most ancient and most advanced ancient mathematical tool in the world that is 40,000 years old. And you ask them about the Shango bone, which is even more complex because it has different counting systems. And what you find is that teachers don't know about that.
I don't.
And guess what? Part of what we are doing, by the way, the reason why I left politics, MEC, it's because I'm now taking the fight of the classroom, because I feel that all of us want to be politicians, and we are not assisting the government to decolonize and Africanize education, because decolonization and Africanization does not necessarily mean you are going to be calling, you are going to be coming up with different concepts or whatever. But what it means is that if a child is coming to study geometry in class, let's start from the Rondavale. Let's start from the geometric shapes of their art. Let's start from Uela Mashangu. Those geometric shapes. Let's start from the known. And what we are doing in South Africa currently, and I blame us, I'm not blaming government, which is why, because some of us, we are academics, yet we decided to go and be in parliament then and argue with Malema and so forth, and that was not helping us. You know, and I took a conscious decision that no. If we want to decolonize and Africanize education in Africa, if we wanted to undo the myths that this continent is a dark continent, we have to go back to something that says, we're talking about archaeological evidence here. What I'm going to say to you, MEC, is that the most important thing is that we need to have even experts that are supporting us, that are advising you as politicians to be aligned. Well, I don't want to say ideologically, because when you say ideologically, many people rush to political ideology. We are not talking about that. They need to be aligned in terms of the decolonization and the Africanization agenda, because we are talking about empirical evidence here. We are not daydreaming and saying, no, mathematics, we have African foundations. No, go to Swaziland, you will find the Libombo bone, it's there. By the way, the Ishango bone is still sitting in Belgium. I don't know what it is doing in Belgium when it is from us. So I'm saying to you, you ask a very, very relevant question, because this is not just about the language. It will be wrong of us, in short, to limit our discussion here to just changing the language without changing the ideology. And by the way, ideology, I'm not talking about political ideology. I'm talking in the sense that you were putting it, sir.
I want to go to our audience for one last round of questions. I saw a gentleman there that's had his hand up for a long time. A gentleman here. So gentleman with the hat, then the gentleman with the black jacket and the blue shirt. And then James will choose the last speaker. Before we open to the last one, MEC, just a quick anecdote on teaching history.
Yeah.
It's good enough to put to change the books and the curriculum. So a few years ago, I have a little sister, and she was at high school in Cape Town, and I went to her and I said, can I see your history textbook to see if it's changed from my time? And she showed it to me, and I was very glad to see that District 6, for example, the story of District 6 was fully covered. And I said to my sister, have you covered District 6? She said to me, no, the teacher said we're going to skip that one. So to the point of the panel, that, it's about hearts and minds as well. It's about re-educating the teachers as well, and everyone in teaching. Let's do the last three questions before we wrap up for the evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Adriaan. Max Ramasike from the National Governors Association. I think in future we'll also request that as panelists not only focus on one association, so that there's a balance of view. It's only FEXAS which is only representing Afrikaner schools, so that you have a balanced view.
Sure.
But having said that, my question is to Paul, and I think Paul is not telling the truth, because one of the things that we have seen as associations, because it's not only two of us, there's plenty of us, the MEC, Panyaza Lesufi, he makes an effort to meet with all of us as SGP Association, to consult with us on things that needs to happen. Now, Paul and his association, after the consultation, then they take the MEC to court because they do not want to open schools in the African schools. I'm a parent, I stay in the suburb. There's an Afrikaner school next to my gate. My child cannot access that school because now he cannot speak Afrikaans. And now we are supposed to be taking our children far from where. So I'm saying to Paul, now that he spoke about diversity, I'm saying, Paul, as we live here, can you give us an assurance that as we move tomorrow, you will open a school where my child will be accepted for who he is, not for the language that he speaks, so that then we can hold, because this month is Mandela month. All of us love Mandela. But when it comes to schools, no, it's black Afrikaner schools. These schools cannot accommodate. So can you give us an assurance, Paul, to say all schools will accommodate our children? I'm staying in the suburbs. Then I can come to you and say, open the school. Then the last one it will be, in terms of the school governing bodies, can you give us statistics to say, because you said you represent all governing bodies, give us statistics to say, in your association, how many governing bodies are there in your association that are representing black schools? Where also, in the former Molisi school, where we then can say, learners are 98% blacks, but the teachers are still 98% white in Molisi schools, and you're not saying anything as an association. So can you give us an assurance to say we'll have schools to all learners?
Thank you. Let's go to the gentleman at the back, Carl, and then the last question.
Thank you very much, and thanks for this evening, for arranging it as well. My name is George. I'm the chairman of the governing body at my children's school. My wife is a grade 9 maths teacher, and I'm an employer of people as well. And what I've noticed over the years, over the past 10, 15 years, there's been a steady decline in the caliber of people applying for jobs at the various companies that I've worked at, specifically around maths and basic English literacy and computer skills. And unfortunately, there's been a lot of banter and laughter tonight, and I don't think we appreciate how serious this problem is. It is great to laugh and make light of things. I'm aware of the concern about language, but when my grade 9 maths pupils are writing an exam and the grade 9 maths exam adds up to 98 when it says it adds up to 100%, when 12% of the marks are wrong, when they've been allocated inappropriately, when the first question you mentioned, MEC, that we need to be in the classroom, how's your mindset? I'm a psychologist. How's your mindset when you're sitting writing an exam and the first question that you asked is wrong? It's a multiple choice question where you've got to choose one of 4 questions. Not one of those questions is right. MEC, what does that do to your mind? You're nervous writing an exam. The 4 questions that you're given to choose, not one of them are right. 12%. On the exam, it's 98%. It's already wrong. Another 12 questions you've got to throw away. There's a lack of leadership and there's a lack of management in the department. And it makes me very cross.
Thank you very much. Last question.
Hello.
Thank you.
Good evening, fellow South Africans. My name is Pindi Mapena. I'm an educator from Gelexdal Secondary School, which is a colored school. I am teaching Afrikaans, and I've never specialized in Afrikaans, and I'm forced to teach Afrikaans in that school. MEC, you know that school? You visited our school twice, wherein you even, I don't know, so one of your crew members requested me to gather the learners. This one is one of my former learners, so that you address them, because we had an issue of a learner who passed on at school due to these mobile things.
No, it's not.
Hence, I'm going to say to you, fellow South Africans, your time frame, MEC, I don't agree with it, to eradicate mobiles. The learners are dying in those mobiles. The learners are collapsing in those mobiles. It's hot in those mobiles. We don't have air cons. We don't have electricity. to keep us alive and fence. You understand? The very same learner who passed on got trapped. You know the story. And he passed on. And what did the Department of Education do? Nothing. It's still quiet up until now. Fellow South Africans, I want to ask MEC, why did you eradicate Africans in primary schools in the townships? Because as an Afrikaans teacher, I'm teaching the very same learners, Ababuya from the township, who are starting to do Afrikaans at grade 7 or grade 8. They hardly don't know what is ek. What bedoel ek? They don't know. You write and say, kies een van die woorde tussen hakies. Choose one of the following words in brackets. Then you start with ek. Slap Andy. They must choose. Slap kamer. Then they say ek slap Andy bad kamer. And if bad Andy, yet kamer. You understand? These are the challenges that I'm facing. I don't sleep. Last year I got admitted. I went for 3 months to ICU, get a spine operation because of overloading, marking. Siyakhuluma, no one is attending to us. And teaching a language or a subject that the learners don't understand. I'm teaching foundation phase at Gelekstad, and it's a high school. Because I will start doing vowels with the learners so they can understand what is egg, what is A, B, C. So MEC, I want to know, because you visited Gelekstad and we thought you will address us, the school that I'm teaching in is very violent. As I was listening, it's a colored school. We have a problem with drugs. As I was listening to Mark Chetty last night on TV, he was giving a tally on our stats that some of the teachers, they say, why there's violence in schools? Why there's bullying in schools? I'm going to address that. And according to Mark Chetty and the Minister of Basic Education, they said it's because some teachers feel that they took a wrong direction or a wrong profession. It's a lie. It's not like that. Fellow South Africans, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm going to tell you the truth today. In black schools, we don't have sports fields. We don't have sports. And it's something that will keep the learners busy. Something that will bring discipline in our schools is sports. That is why when we compare with white schools, we think white schools are the best, which is not, because there's sports. We don't have that very same polo you alluded on earlier on MEC. We don't have. At least if we had one, we would appreciate. Our learners would not be involved in drugs.
Bindi, can I ask you to wrap the question?
Okay, can I just finish one?
Yeah, just the question, thanks.
Why did you eradicate debates in schools, assemblies, SCMs, religious education, health education? You know, all of those programs, which we know that they will be able to teach a learner. Umntwana will be able to understand what are the 10 commandments. Do not. Our kids are stealing because they don't understand their
Sabotage. There comes the learner. Defending the teacher.
Bindi, just wrap up. Thank you.
All right, skills education. We don't have skills in our schools. We rely on some of our fellow foreign brothers, Zimbabweans and all that, because their schools teach skills. I don't know who eradicated the skills in South Africa. We had 2 days, we had
with sewing.
We had handworks, we had sewing, we had, we were cooking in our schools. All of those has been eradicated. That is why we have ill-disciplined learners today, because there's nothing that those learners can do.
Thank you.
All right, the last one. Sorry, the last one. That is why we say depoliticize education. There's too much politics in our education system. And what I want to ask is that, MEC, please employ me. I'm putting my CV directly to you. There's lots and lots of things to discuss, the challenges that the teachers are facing. When it comes to SATU, it's even worse. SATU is worse because it's failing us.
Okay.
Please do something.
Thank you very much. I grew up with two teachers as parents. I've long learned not to fight and debate with the teacher. MEC, there's a lot of the questions were addressed to you. Can I ask you to wrap up, to speak to them, and then also wrap up, and then I'll go to each of the panelists for final wrap. Thank you.
Well, I've taken note of what George raised about question papers being wrong and the importance of maths and basic English. I'll just note them. I'll just note them.
Thank you. He's delivering some papers. Thank you.
I'll deal with them. But our education system is parent-focused. So if something is wrong, it takes parents of that school to fix it. Because it's parents-focused. It's the school that writes the exam, it's the school that arranges. So if the challenge cannot be solved there, if we feel that it will be solved by the MEC here, it won't assist us. That is why our education system is parent-controlled, so that they can identify the problems where it happens and sort it out. But if it's about district and other things, I think our teams are here and will take those things. I just hope the issue of lack of leadership and management does not relate because who's in charge now? Because when some people were in charge before, there was no lack of management and leadership. I hope it's not like that. I'm just raising it so that we can deal with that aspect and clarify it. But I'll check the issues that have been raised. Sispindi, you know, I value your input and I appreciate your input. But let's not misrepresent facts. You know very well, and it's unfortunate, and that is why I personally went there. I met with the family of the child that died there at the school. It's unfortunate, you know. The school governing body hired an unqualified person to fix electricity at the school, and the child was choked. There's a report. I went to the parents. I met the parents, as you said. I met the school. I organized an official investigation. It gave us a report. And when we went to the parents and they said they're taking legal action against the department, we'll wait for the legal action. And I told them, I'm not even going to oppose it. We want to talk so that we can resolve the matter. So to come here and say, mobile school killed a learner, when the report that I shared with everyone indicate that the school governing body appointed an ill-qualified person to fix the electricity at the school. So let's not mismanage a public space for other things. I don't know, let me continue, sorry. I don't know a decision that has been taken to eradicate Afrikaans in our schools. I haven't taken that decision. I don't know. That is why I don't know, maybe it's the national minister, but in Gauteng, Afrikaans is taught in our schools. No, there is, I know. But if there is somebody who took that decision, it's not, you know, I like the issue that you are raising. To say you are teaching at high school, then you must start with primary school work. It says a lot about the quality of our educators. You know, and that's the debate that I started with here, that all our teachers are trained from the same pot, but the outcomes are different. And that's the issue that we need to zero in and deal with it. There is no university that is training Afrikaans only teachers in it. It teaches all of us. And that's the issue that we need to attend and work off it. No, you spoke, we didn't disturb you, and now others are speaking at this time. No, but...
No, let's give the MEC a chance to finish.
I'm even reluctant to finish because I was trying to respond to the issues that I need to deal with it. You know, the issue of religious education, the issue of assembly, I'm on public record, the SGBs are here. I said all children must go to assembly and pray. They will choose the prayer that they want. Those that don't want to pray will go away. Those who want to pray, they will pray. I'm on record on that one. I've issued, that is why I'm saying, when you criticize somebody, study their documents first. If you don't study our documents and want me to employ you, it's going to be difficult because you don't know what you are going to implement. You know, it's very, very difficult. I've never said. Actually, I'm on record to say if you check schools, and I can give you those statistics, schools with less violence are schools that have a strong element of religion. I'm on record. So we've put that thing. So we need to resolve the issue of school sports differently. School sports in township schools was killed by gangsters, not by politicians or departments. I can tell you, when there were school events, athletics, people will come there to hijack women and bring drinks and other wrong things. That's what used to happen. So we need to, and I agree with you, and that is why we've got the Motsepe, we've got Danon, there are various sporting codes that are coming in, including the issue of debates. So I share your pain and your frustration on overloaded work, paperwork. That is why in Gauteng, we want to be a paperless education system. Because majority of things is just repetition of something that is unnecessary. You mark a book of a learner, you must prepare a schedule at the end of the year. Whereas when you are on the paperless platform, those marks are automatically calculated and automatically submitted. That's the investment that we are doing in Gauteng. And that is what I'm saying. When you criticize us, read our report. We've published a roadmap 2024 document. It's a public document. We are waiting for feedbacks by the end of July. And I'll advise you to add some of the ideas that we've put on this particular matter. Thanks.
Thank you very much, MEC. Paul Colditz, final remarks and the response.
Thank you. I'll start with the response. And to my colleague from NASGB, I hope your misrepresentation wasn't delivered. But maybe I didn't express myself properly, and that's why there's this misunderstanding. I made it very clear that we represent schools, we have schools from all communities as members. You made the statement that we only represent Afrikaans medium schools. That is nonsense. That is what you said. As far as opening up the schools are concerned, I've also said that not a single member of FETSAS from the former Model C school sections, we do not represent every single Model C school, former Model C school in the country, and I wish we could stop talking about Model C. We have public schools. Yeah. Not a single member of FETSAS is exclusively white. Many of them are exclusively black and exclusively colored, if you want to talk in terms of color or race. But not a single one is exclusively white. They've all admitted children from all races. But can I tell you this? If you look at the situation in Gauteng, where you are from, for example, you have a shortage of 300 schools, at least 300 schools in this province. Schools that were built to accommodate 750 learners now accommodate 1,500 because of the shortage of schools. So you can't go to any school in this country. In fact, the MEC prohibits you from doing so because he's determined a 30-kilometer radius. Previously 5 kilometers, which the Constitutional Court ruled was unconstitutional. Now it's 30 kilometers. So you can no longer take your children to any school in the province. But your biggest problem is that those schools, the highly sought after schools, are filled way beyond capacity and I can't promise you admission of your child to a particular school because the school, pardon? Yes, of course. Many of them are indeed parallel medium school, provided, do you want the numbers? Do you want the numbers?
Let's run.
There are 138 single medium Afrikaans medium schools in this province within a 2,077 public schools. It's 5% of the total number of schools in the province. That has to cater for 10% at least of the population if you want Afrikaans single medium education. But we can take our discussion outside and further at national where we see each other every quarter. I just object to the fact that you have misrepresented what I've said and what I stand for. And then I appreciate the passion with which people are speaking here, with which they are participating, which shows that education is an extremely important, important issue and topic. In South Africa, we're not performing as we should be, failing our children miserably. And we need to have 10 of these discussions every week.
Prof Metcalfe?
Yeah, it's interesting that Paul closed in that way, because that's my sense. Thank you. Thank you for hosting this. Thank you to everyone who comes with such deep concern for education. And I think that what we need is much more public debate, public sharing. People who feel passionately about corporal punishment need to write, to share. People, your ideas were fantastic. Write, share. But the sense that we all have that education is important, that it's the future of the country, that we're not going to have a country, the eagerness that people have approached this just indicates to me that we mustn't leave it to the politicians to be talking about education. That all of us need to read, inform ourselves, and share.
Thank you. Last word to Dr. Khoza.
Okay. I think it's very important that we have to stress the critical importance of social cohesion. And social cohesion has a context. You can't just talk about social cohesion without addressing the issues of decolonization, reconstruction, and reconciliation in South Africa. Because if you don't do that, you are going to end up with SGBs that do have these powers, but they don't actually understand the direction that they are supposed to be pursuing. We need to invest in training our SGBs so that our SGBs understand where are we heading to as a country. And we are volunteering our services. We are saying, all of us as South Africans, we are in this together. And I wanted to say, and I'm glad that the MEC has made it clear that he has nothing, no attitude against Africans. In fact, I'm one person that says the state can learn a lot from Afrikaans, because Afrikaans is a very new language, but it grew and it became entrenched into the system because the state was deliberate about that. That is exactly what the state has to do with African languages.
Well done.
And on that positive note, I want to thank each and every one of you. Thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules, taking time off Twitter tonight. Twitter didn't see you tonight, MEC, to come here. To the viewers at home, thank you so much for staying with us. Thanks for joining the conversation. We didn't agree on everything tonight, but there was a lot. But to have the conversation is the important thing, to start talking. And we'll continue this. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man.